We got some big news for UFC 303. Ian Garry vs. Michael Venom Page has been added to the card, not Colby Covington, which is kind of disappointing. I don't know why Colby didn't take this fight. I don't know if he's avoiding Ian Garry. That wouldn't make sense because on paper, Ian Garry is one of Colby's easier matchups. A striker with pretty suspect wrestling. I mean, he's been taken out before by worse wrestlers, guys like Song Kanan, who is not known for his wrestling at all. I don't know if he thinks he's going to be able to blackmail Dana again into giving him another title shot. Honestly, I think Colby just has a foot out the door at this point, but Ian Garry versus Michael Page is still a really interesting fight, and it could potentially be the co-main now because we do know, obviously, Khalil Roundtree had to pull out of his fight against Jamal Hill because he took a tainted supplement. I don't know how he would know that, but whatever. Khalil Roundtree had to pull out against Jamal Hill, and Carlos Ulberg stepped in. Pretty big step up in competition for him. He's coming off a 12-second knockout against Alonzo Menafield only a few weeks ago, and he's just been running through the division, first round knockout after first round knockout. And this is a really interesting fight, but in terms of star power and interest, I think more people care about Ian Garry versus MVP than Jamal Hill versus Ulberg. So I wouldn't be surprised if that became the co-main. And what happened to Ian Garry saying he wasn't going to fight anyone below him? I'm pretty sure a few months ago he said, when asked about fighting Michael Page, he said, "I'm not going to fight anyone below me. I'm only going to fight guys ahead of me." But now he is fighting MVP, who's ranked 13th, whereas he's ranked number 7. But I guess it kind of makes sense because really the only guys ahead of him that make sense are Colby Covington, who seems to be ducking him, and Kamaru Usman, who has just completely disappeared. But Ian Machado Garry, gotta include that, versus Michael Venom Page is a really interesting fight. It is rare that I have no idea who is going to win a fight. Usually coming into these breakdown videos, I have a pretty good idea of who I'm going to pick as an early prediction. But for this fight, I have no idea. And I think that's why this fight is so intriguing to me. If there is ever a time for Ian Garry to show some sort of wrestling game, it's this fight right here, because MVP has shown numerous times to really struggle with the wrestlers. He doesn't have great takedown defense. We saw him really struggle with the wrestling against Logan Storley, and in his last fight against Kevin Holland, who's not known for his wrestling, Holland was able to take him down and almost submit him on the ground, put him in a really tight choke. But Ian Garry hasn't shown much of a wrestling game. He was able to take down Neil Magny, and that's about it. Now, I know he has been training down in Brazil with Gilbert Burns, so he's definitely improved in his ground game, I would guess. But I think at least trying to take this fight down would be a good strategy for Ian Garry because we've seen MVP struggles on the ground before. Whereas on the feet, I think this fight will be really competitive. Ian Garry likes to fight long. He likes to jab, kick, circle away, counter you with a right hand when you come into range. But against MVP, who is longer than him, they're both the same height at 6'3", but MVP has a 5-inch reach advantage, 79 inches to 74 inches, which is something Ian Garry really isn't used to. He's not used to fighting someone who's longer than him. MVP will also switch stances between southpaw and orthodox. I would say he is better out of orthodox, but he will switch it up. He'll switch into southpaw, and when he's in southpaw, that opens up the body kicks and the head kicks on Ian Garry, but it also does open up the body and head kicks on MVP, and we do know Ian Garry has very good kicks. And then when MVP is in orthodox, that opens up the leg kicks on each other, and I actually think the leg kicks could be a very big part of Ian Garry's game plan. We know Ian Garry has amazing leg kicks, and MVP has that wide karate stance, which is very susceptible to those leg kicks. But Michael Page is probably going to spend a lot of this fight out of range looking for his opening and then darting in with a right hand, which might make those leg kicks less effective. Actually, it would definitely make those leg kicks less effective. And then off of MVP's blitz, as he looks for that big right hand, I could see Ian Garry timing that right straight. That is his best punch, and MVP really doesn't have great defense. He keeps his hands very low, he keeps his chin high, and he throws these really wide winging shots that Ian Garry could pick out and counter, but MVP is super fast. I would say he has the speed advantage, and he's also very powerful. He has the ability to knock anyone out with one punch. His right hand has so much power behind it. And Ian Garry has been dropped before against Song Kanan, and Ian Garry just has pretty suspect boxing defense. I really don't like the way he exposes his chin, and I really don't like the way he drops his hands on the retraction of his punches. I'm pretty sure that's how he got dropped against Song Kanan. I think he threw out a right hand and then dropped it to his hip, and then Kanan countered him with a left hook. And I think MVP might try and time a right hand off of Ian's jab. Ian does have a really good jab, but having a 5-inch reach disadvantage probably doesn't help him here, and MVP has a solid jab himself. has good footwork, knows how to cut off the cage. He's not going to just chase Ian around like Jeff Neal did, just letting Ian circle back to the center after he's trapped up against the cage. MVP's going to take advantage of that, but I really don't know who's going to win this fight. I got to make an early prediction, so I'm going to say Ian Garry wins this fight. I think he wins a decision. I think it will be a fun fight unless both guys just sit back and try and pick out the opening on each other and just point fight, which they sometimes will. But this fight definitely has a lot of intrigue to it, and it's honestly one of the better fights on this UFC 303 card. But anyways, that's the end of the video. If you're new here and you did enjoy, please be sure to subscribe, like the video, turn on post notifications, comment your early predictions for this fight in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.